So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Officers Association Lunchtime Webinar Series. Networking and Research is the second of 5-step process webinars that we'll be running. And I'm delighted to welcome my special guest today, Lisa Jones. Lisa, big welcome to you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Clive. Hello, everyone. Just by way of introduction, I'm a career consultant at the Officers Association, but in a former life, I was an army officer. And after that, when I left the army, I went into banking, working for 2 top-tier investment banks for nearly 10 years. So hopefully I've got a bit of experience and a few nuggets to share with you today.
Thanks, Lisa. So, Lisa, I hear a lot about advice that people give when they are to people transitioning. And they say if there are 3 bits of advice they give, it's network, network, and network. So what is networking and why is it important?
So you're absolutely right, Clive. The most important thing I strongly believe when you're looking to find something new is to network. And I think a lot of people are a bit scared of this word networking. It sounds a bit kind of corporate. It sounds a bit, not like the kind of thing that military people are familiar with or indeed might enjoy. But actually, the reality is that military people are actually quite good at networking. And why is that? Well, because all networking really is having conversations with people. It's as simple as that. The other part of networking, which is a kind of bonus that perhaps people don't think about, is that networking can really help you with your research. And obviously today's webinar is focused on both networking and research, and really they go hand in hand. Through networking, through talking to people, you're going to be getting knowledge. Every person you speak to, you will come away with something new that you didn't know before. But also the other part of it is also, and this perhaps is the bit that people really don't like, is that broadcasting of your message, selling yourself a little bit. And we'll go on to a bit about that later. But it's also about asking for help, advice, guidance, just asking people to tell you their story. And really just, as I say, having conversations. It absolutely will shorten your job search. The more networking you do, the better decision you will probably make eventually, but also the more likely it is you are to not waste time looking at things that turn out not to be the kind of thing that you really want to do. So it will really help you focus, and that's why it will shorten your job search. So all I can say is my best tip is with networking, start with the people that you know. So start with your friends, your family even. Start with people that you know who've already left, who've already made that leap, and just chat to them. They don't have to be doing the exact thing that you think you might want to do. Who knows, you might even learn something new by talking to people doing something that you hadn't even thought of. But the more people you can talk to, the better. But also the people that you know, starting with them hopefully will be a bit of an easier way in. But then hopefully what you want is for them to pass you on to others who can then really help. And those people might be decision makers, they might be hiring managers. And obviously that's perhaps a little bit later down the line when you're going to be actually job seeking. So when you're in your early stages of resettlement, you're not going to be necessarily looking for a job, but knowledge gathering. And really, I can't overstate the importance of that.
Thanks, Lisa. Can you tell us a little bit about research and the importance of doing that and how you would go about it?
So obviously I've kind of slightly touched on this already, but I think your research can start online. I mean, I'm not going to diss Googling stuff and looking at companies online. Use LinkedIn. It's a fantastic tool. Follow companies on LinkedIn. But obviously what you then want to move on to is talking to real people. So I think, from talking to existing employees within the companies that interest you and just asking them basic questions like, what does the job entail? How much screen time is there versus being out and about? How much client interaction, how much interaction with real people is there? Because I think a lot of military people have been very fortunate in having, non-desk based jobs, and they've been had a good balance being out and about and, interacting with either their guys, their teams, or, just being on operations and doing something really tangible. And going into a civvy job where you're looking at a load of spreadsheets all day can be quite a shock. So try and find out what your attitude is towards that kind of thing, how you feel about it, and how others who've done that before you also have found that transition. Is it as bad as you feared? Obviously, if you're coming from a staff job, you might be quite used to that, and that might be fine. But I think trying to get a feel for that is really important. But definitely make the best use of tools, especially LinkedIn. Now, the OA runs some really great LinkedIn workshops, so do look out for those on our website. But you can also talk to your career consultant about LinkedIn and have a session tailored towards your individual profile.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, we've just gone through a unique 15 months or so where we've had lockdown and tier systems with COVID-19. And we've had to learn to do a lot more online than we previously have. But thinking with that in your mind, what's the best way of networking, do you think?
Well, I've already kind of bigged up LinkedIn, and I'm just going to say it again. I mean, at its most basic level, LinkedIn is a massive database of people. And if a really good way of getting, doing research, finding out about what you might want to do is through talking to people, then surely access to a massive database, I think it's got something like 750 million users globally, is going to be a good thing. So using LinkedIn, and the more people you're connected to on LinkedIn, the greater your reach is going to be. So each person you're connected to will then in turn be connected to, on average, about 400 people. So if you think that every time you connect to a new person, that's access to an additional 400 people that you could have through your new connection, it's kind of quite mind-boggling. As Clive has said, the recent, the last kind of 12, 18 months or so has really changed the way that people are interacting, are meeting, and things like Zoom, Teams, Skype, which perhaps before were seen as a bit of a cop-out, are now the norm. They're absolutely acceptable ways of communicating with people. I would still argue that a face-to-face, if you can, is better, and people will remember you longer if they've actually met you. But I think in this current environment, it really is perfectly okay to arrange a Skype call or a Teams or Zoom call. And actually, you're probably going to be able to get better access to people than you did before, because they're going to have more flexibility. Additionally, you'll save time, you'll save money, from no train fares and things like that, no buying expensive coffees, etc., etc. So, I think it's all very achievable. And indeed, I've got contacts I know at the moment who are in Sierra Leone, who are in, all different parts, in Australia, in the US, in different parts of the world, looking to transition. And, this has been a fantastic opportunity for them to really reach people and join events. A lot of companies are doing online events now. Absolutely, you can join them from wherever you are and kind of try and fit them into your schedule. And I think that has been, a real bonus of the last 12 months, that people are able to have a lot more access perhaps than they used to. So what is the best way of networking? I mean, I would just say, just try and speak to people, and whether that is online or in person, it really doesn't matter, but do try and have a conversation.
Thanks, Lisa. So how would you go about approaching a meeting? How would you prepare yourself and set up a meeting?
Yeah, I think this is actually really important. And I think it can be quite tricky when you're networking at the beginning and you're only doing your research, and you don't necessarily know what you want to do. But I think what you do need to know is about what it is that you want to know from the person that you're meeting. And really, that can be something as basic as, I'd really like to hear your story. I'd really like to understand how you went from being an infantry officer to working at BT, for example. You know, I would have thought that only people from the Royal Signals went to BT. How does that work? You know, just a basic conversation like that can be a real starter. And also, I think people like to feel helpful. And if they don't feel at the end of the meeting that they've helped you because you haven't really known what it is that you want to get out of the meeting, that they can kind of leave feeling flat, when actually what you want is for them to leave thinking, that was a fantastic meeting, what a really interesting person, they've done a bit of research about me and my organization, they seemed really interested in what I've got to say. I'm going to have some conversations about that person when I get back to the office, or when I'm on my next call, or whatever it might be. So I think having a bit of a plan about what you want to get out of it is really important. As I say there in the third point, ask people for things that they can easily deliver. And that kind of chimes with the whole people liking to feel that they're being helpful. So you're not going to be saying, hello, I need a job, can you help me? Because actually that organization might not be hiring at the moment, in which case that's going to be a pretty short conversation. No, sorry, I can't help you, we're not hiring at the moment. Whereas, as I said, if you say something like, I'd really like to hear your story, I'd really like to your perspective on this, or you could even print off a job that you've seen on their website and say, I've seen this job, I'm not about to apply for it right now because I'm not in the right time scale, but I'd just like to run through it with you. I've got a few questions about some of the terminology, or I'm wondering whether I'm pitching myself at the right level given my background. The beauty of talking to other ex-military people is that they will totally get who you are, what level you're at. And also, because they're now in that organization, they will understand how that might fit with your background and experience. And they can perhaps explain some of the jargon that you might have been seeing when you've looked on the website at some of the jobs. So, going to them, just asking if they can, demystify some of the jargon, I think is a perfectly valid, reason to ask for a meeting. But I've said there, do not focus on you rather than on information, ideas, and connections. And I think the reason I say that is just because if you just spend the whole time talking about yourself, again, people are going to think, well, why did he ask or she ask to speak to me when all they've done is talk about themselves? People, as I say, like to feel useful. So if they feel like they've imparted some wisdom, some information, and you're hugely grateful for that, then that's going to make them feel like they've done something helpful. But when the opportunity does come to talk about you, ensure that you do deliver a clear message. And I think, as I said at the beginning, and especially in the early stages, you might not be sure about what it is that you want to do. So you're not going to go into the meeting saying, I really want a job in XYZ department at this level, because you've probably got no idea what kind of level or what kind of role or department you might want to go into. But what you do need to be an expert on is yourself, is you. You do need to know who you are, what you're good at, what skills you've got, and perhaps have some idea of why you think those skills might be quite useful in an industry such as the one that the person that you're meeting is working within. And, if you're struggling with identifying your skills or just struggling with any of that kind of thing, your career consultant at the Officers Association can certainly help you with that and have a tailored session around that if you want to.
Thanks, Lisa. So how would you go about, any tips for going about maximising the opportunity and maximising the benefits you would get out of a face-to-face or online virtual meeting?
Absolutely. And I think, this word opportunity is really important, because it absolutely is an opportunity. Even if someone says to you, let's have a coffee, that is a real opportunity. And you need to treat it a little bit like an interview. And what I mean by that is, not to get too panicked or spend days preparing, but it does mean doing a little bit of research. At least look that person up on LinkedIn, look at their background. Where have they worked before? Were they ex-military? Perhaps even where did they go to university? You might find that you went to the same university. That will give you some, a connection there that you can then kind of leverage. But also, as I've said, understand your personal brand. So it's about kind of going to the meeting with a clear idea of how you can talk about yourself succinctly and, in a way that people will think is relevant to their organization. I've said highlight your achievements, even if it feels uncomfortable. And I think people do certainly find this uncomfortable. And military people don't tend to boast about how great they are or the things that they've achieved, but you can do it in a subtle way, such as, just illustrating a particular skill that you think you're good at. So you might say, I think one of my strengths is building effective relationships with people. And the reason I think I'm quite good at that is because when I was in Afghanistan, I had to build relationships with a lot of external agencies and with the Afghan army. And, I was commended for that work. And what I did produced some really tangible results. And, just something like that, I think will then help people to say, oh, he's not just saying he's good at building relationships. He's just given me a really good example of why he is or how he is. If you can sneak any kind of metrics into a conversation and certainly into your CV, then that's also quite useful because civvies love metrics. They love hearing about how things have been improved by 20% or streamlined, resulting in a cost saving or a benefit. And so, that kind of thing I think can be really, really helpful. So do try and think about that kind of thing. I'm not saying pepper every single sentence with it because then it gets a bit too much. But if you can just stick in the odd percentage here or there or whatever, then I think it does help to really back up the fact that you've had an impact and been effective. I say at the bottom there, 30-second elevator pitch. Now, anyone who's done a career transition workshop might recall this phrase because they do talk about it on there. And what that is just practicing a 30-second speech, if you like, about yourself, about your background, about your skills, about what you're good at, perhaps even your aspirations. And really do practice that as much as you can. And you might feel silly kind of looking in the mirror, saying it to yourself, or record yourself on your phone and listen to yourself saying it. But I think the more you practice it, the more it comes naturally. And I think when I've said use the opportunity, even if you meet somebody briefly, you're on your way out of a meeting and someone says, oh, did you know that that's XYZ? Have you met them before? And you've literally got a few seconds to say, hi, good to meet you. I'd really like to catch up with you because I am really interested in for the following reasons, or my background in XYZ really lends itself to, all right, and I think that chimes with what you guys are doing at the moment, whatever it might be, but any opportunity that you can have to say something about who you are, what your unique skills are, or why you think your background and experience would be relevant in an industry or an organization such as theirs, is something that you really can't let slip. And so, as I've said, you don't need to be an expert on an organization or on an industry or understand exactly where you might fit right from the word go. Of course you don't. But you do need to be an expert on you, and you do need to be able to talk about yourself succinctly and with relevance.
Thanks, Lisa. Can we just go back, Paul, at one slide? There's a comment you made in there which I think is brilliant. It's the third bullet point. It says effectively that you have control over what people learn about you, and I think that's a wonderful comment to note. Let's go on to the final one. So Lisa, this is fantastic stuff. So what do you do after the meeting? What's the follow-up actions that you'd recommend?
I will just, if I may, say something about that. You control what people know about you. And I think that's particularly relevant for people who are leaving a job under, circumstances that are not what they might want. They might have been made redundant, or you might be leaving the military with a sad, sour taste in your mouth, or your most recent boss might have written you a really awful report and you feel quite aggrieved about that. Well, whatever it might be, I think people can get quite caught up on that side of things when they're networking or delivering their message. And I think it's worth really, really focusing on that point. You control what people learn about you, and what you tell people, that is what they will take away. That they won't know any of the background unless you tell them. And so you just need to focus on the positives. I always remember myself when I was in banking. I had a job that I didn't think was particularly exciting, but a friend of mine had exactly the same job, and he had been to a drinks party and had told a mutual friend of ours all about how great his job was. And the mutual friend said to me, "Oh, you must be really cheesed off because such and such has got such a great job, and you're always saying that your job isn't up to much." And I said, "Well, my job's exactly the same as his." And then he told me all the stuff that the guy had said, and I thought, it is all true. It's just the way that he spoke about it made it sound much more interesting and much more exciting than I was. I was being quite self-deprecating and going around saying, "Oh no, it's nothing much. It's very tedious, spreadsheets, quite boring." When, actually, if I told it in a different way, still being truthful, people would have taken a much different message away. So you really do control how other people view you. But to go on to this follow-up piece, I think it's really important. And I think it sounds obvious to say thank the person for their time, but not everybody does this. Send an email, just say thank you very much. Obviously written thanks are used to be something that people did all the time, not so much anymore, but certainly if you did send a written note of thanks, that would be remembered. But at the very least, a LinkedIn message or an email would be much appreciated. And do invite the person to connect on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. It's perfectly acceptable. Once you've met somebody, they can put a name to a face. And also when you're on LinkedIn, you've got their contact details and you're connected then. Even if they move on to another job later on, you're still connected. Equally, if during your meeting you have discussed a contact that they're going to put you in touch with, and they've given you that contact, you could email then a couple of weeks later and say, "Thank you so much for putting me in touch with John Smith. I found him really helpful. He's now going to introduce me to someone else, and I'm really benefiting from that. Thank you so much for your help." But also, I think, again, where people like to feel helpful, they also like to hear how you're getting on. And, if they feel that that's even in some small way, due to their guidance, then that will, make them feel very positive about that experience. And then finally, pay it back. I think, it's an obvious thing to say, but, if you are going to be helped by people now, in 2 or 3 years' time, when you're in job of dreams and service leaver comes to you and says, "Please tell me all about your role. It sounds like exactly the kind of thing I'd love to do," then, it is, it's fantastic if you're able to do that for them. And I think this ex-military community that we are very fortunate to have is absolutely amazing and really second to none. I've got civvy friends that can't believe how amazing it is and are hugely jealous of it, in fact. So, do take advantage of it as much as you can. The OA has got a network of contacts that you can take advantage of. We've talked about LinkedIn, but, grow your network and really do take advantage of it.
Lovely, thank you very much, Lisa. That's excellent, really great. We haven't had any questions, although I've had a comment from Caroline, so thank you very much for that comment. I won't read it out. I think you should all have access to that anyway. Just to go on then, the next slide, where to get further advice. If you haven't already registered with the Officers Association, I would strongly recommend you think about doing that. It's very easy to do. It's online through our website. And once you've registered with us, you can self-book an appointment, a career consultation with Lisa or with one of our other career consultants. Registering with the OA also gives you access to the network contact list that Lisa's just mentioned. But I mentioned career consultations. The career consultants also do a CV or LinkedIn review. They'll give you jobs advice and might also help you with a job application. It'll give you access to a targeted jobs board. That's a jobs board where the employers who post jobs are actively looking to recruit ex-service people. There's invitations to regular events, and we have a list of events on our website. But we also issue out or circulate and publish a weekly newsletter. Actually, it's 2 weekly newsletters, one which covers the latest jobs and the other which tells you about events that we are planning. Even if you're not looking for a job at the time, there is an opportunity that you can look at jobs which are being posted, which might spark an interest from you. I've had a note from, just bear with me, one has come through from John, who says, I attended a LinkedIn workshop 2 to 3 years ago, and it was really useful, but I've forgotten it all. Are they regular events? Well, Lisa's mentioned LinkedIn events. We run 6 LinkedIn workshops per year. They are currently all run online, and there's a morning session and an afternoon session, and they're run by an expert, Lincoln Coots, who not only provides that service to us, but also is a regular speaker on social media aspects at a number of quite well-known universities. From Tim, thank you, Tim. Sorry, Lisa, yes.
I would really recommend those workshops. They're really great. But equally, if you wanted to make an appointment with a career consultant, we can go through your LinkedIn profile and spend half an hour on it, whatever suits you. So do take advantage of that.
So to conclude, thank you all very much indeed for joining us today, and a big thank you to Lisa. Thank you very much, Lisa, for joining us today and for the excellent presentation.
Absolute pleasure. And if anyone wants to link in with me or indeed to book a career consultation, I'd be delighted to help where I can.
At the bottom there is a contact email address. If you email client.admin@officersassociation.org.uk, we will get back to you. So Lisa, thank you very much indeed. Paula, behind the scenes, thank you for your support. And for all of you attending today, thank you very much for joining us. And I hope I've left enough time for you to still have a nice, enjoyable lunch. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye-bye.